Hi, how's it going? Joey here. I want to talk about my top 5 tips I wish I knew before getting the Balisong hobby. So let's get right into it. The first tip I want to talk about is the difference between trainers and live blades. So as you first get into flipping, you're going to want to start on some kind of training blade, which is a butterfly knife that does not have an edge on it, so you can't cut yourself. As you slowly learn your beginner tricks, like your basic openings, your ice pick tricks, things like that, just small tricks that you need to get into the community, that's when you're going to want to buy your first live blade. Now, you don't always have to buy a live blade. I personally would recommend it. It's a lot of fun, but you're gonna want to be careful with live blades because of course they can cut you. Now, any flipper can tell you that no matter how good you are, you're always going to get cut. You can always make a mistake when flipping, and that potential for getting yourself cut is always there. So keep your hands out of harm's way, especially when flipping a knife, you know? Of course, you don't have to buy a live blade ever, but for me, that's a large part of the enjoyment when it comes to butterfly knife flipping. The next tip I want to go over is the price of Balisongs and how expensive it can get being in this hobby. So what lies before us is a little visual representation of Balisongs in order from cheapest to most expensive. As the cheapest knife on this list, we're gonna have the Marcolo C116. You can get this off of Amazon for $60. Next up, we have the Volp Pro, which is gonna be $120-ish. Next up, we have the Glider Arctic. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below, but I believe it's in the 110, 130 range, somewhere in that area. Next up, we have my Machine-Wise little menagerie thing. It's $300. It's got Prisma Pro handles and it's got a Slift T blade. So it's a couple different pieces from different Machine-Wise products. And on the far end, as my most expensive Balisong at the moment, is the Alpha Beast 3.0 at $350 from the Blade Runner Systems website. When it comes to price, the main thing you're going to be paying for after a certain point is materials and how it's manufactured. I think once you get past like the 130, like once you're able to get past the Volt Pro and the Arctic range and you're buying knives like these, you're paying for stuff like the sharpening, the anodization, the machining quality, the materials. If it's titanium, it'll cost a lot more. So that's kind of why you're going to be spending a lot of money on some of these Balisongs. One of the biggest questions people have is why is a 5-ounce item worth over $600? And to sum it all up, Balisongs are small and get machined very, very intensively. Very small details, and it takes a lot of time and effort to make these Balisongs. If you're a brand new flipper and you need your first training Balisong, my personal suggestion would be the Volt Pro by Will Hirsch. It's a great flipper for the price, and I think it's a fantastic introductory Balisong. If you don't have the 120, scratch that. I'm just now remembering this is actually $150, so these would actually switch price-wise. But if you don't have the money to afford a Volt Pro, then a Glider Antarctic or an Arctic would work just fine. Even the original Volp off Amazon is a great option. And even a $60 flipper like the Marcolo C116 is still a great option. It really just depends how much you're willing to spend for these little pieces of metal. The third tip I'm going to be going over is to be aware of scammers in the community. I'm going to be using my Glider Arctic as an example during this segment because recently I was scammed off of Facebook Marketplace when trying to make a purchase for a Glider Antarctic. Now, usually the Antarctic goes for $150, but apparently this guy was willing to sell for $50. I thought, wow, that's too good of a deal to be true, right? Sure enough, it never arrived, even after payment. Later, I went to go check his profile and I was blocked. I had no way of messaging or contacting the seller whatsoever, and Facebook wouldn't let me report his profile for scamming. Now, that's just my own personal story, and I know a lot of other flippers and people in the community have been scammed out of 10 times that amount, maybe even 20 times that amount. That really just goes to show you can't trust anyone you see. Some people have references on their Instagram page, but if they only have a couple references, I personally wouldn't trust it. Some of these deals are too good to be true. That's all I gotta say. Tip number 4. Learn to maintain and take care of your Balisongs. Taking care of your Balisong can be really easy if you do it the right way. When flipping a Balisong, a lot of these moving parts take a pretty big beating, especially when you drop it and you hit it a bunch against the Zen pins. That's why it's always important to use lube on your pivots, especially when you do a lot of flipping. That is, if you care about prolonging the life of your Balisong. Right here, I have a little setup for Balisong maintenance, so it's definitely worth spending the extra money on tools to disassemble. Good lubrication is always great. And just a little tip tip, when you're taking apart your balisong, make sure you take proper precautions not to do things such as cross-threading your screws, stripping your torque screws, or even just scratching your balisongs from excess force. These things can go a long way in prolonging the life of your balisong. Quick little side note, these rubber bite handle indicators are great for live blade balisongs that don't have a latch or don't have any indication which side the bite handle is. I've had times where my brother has gotten cut from touching my balisongs because he didn't know which side was the bite handle. Just using some kind of bite handle indicator, whether it be tape or these rubber pieces, it can potentially prevent a cut. And my last little tip, to just have fun with it. Flipping is never really about having the most expensive knife or having all the knives or being the best flipper. It's just a hobby, just like any other hobby, whether it be arts, craft, cooking. That's how I see it. It's just a hobby and a way to express creativity. The biggest thing is just not to take yourself too seriously. It's kind of crazy the experiences you can have and the people you can meet just because you have one interest in common, balisongs. I think that's a super unique part of the community that not a lot of other communities have. Yeah, I don't know, whether it be content creation or becoming the best flipper. I mean, there's so much you can do in this community. There's a lot of passion that goes into a lot of things, whether it be making these knives even. Number one thing to remember is just have fun with whatever you're doing. I guess that's also kind of just a general life rule of thumb, isn't it? Life tip. All right, well, that has been my 5 tips to succeed in the butterfly knife community. If you enjoyed this kind of content, let me know in the comments below. Maybe leave a like or a sub. That would be great. You don't have to, of course, but it would mean a lot from the bottom of my heart. Anyways, yeah, all y'all beautiful mother freakers, have a great rest of your night.